Hello, folks. So today, let's talk about a much debated topic. Why debated? Because there is, of course, disagreement on this, and there's always been disagreement on this. How will a retrograde planet behave? Does it reverse the outcomes of where it's positioned in the chart? For example, it's Saturn Aries retrograde. Is it going to give Saturn Libra results? Is it auspicious? Is a retrograde planet auspicious in any way, especially the benefics? So there's all kinds of ideas about this. So let's get started on this chat. Yeah. The idea of retrograde needs to be understood first. So, like, what is retrograde anyway? I mean, I've briefly touched on the subject in various transit videos I've done. It doesn't mean that the planet is now going backward. This is very important to understand. Because if you say that the planet is going backward, then you can just say, oh, well, the results will be reversed, because it's going backward, and therefore you will have reversals, right? So it's not as simple as that. All planets revolve around the sun, all of them, including Earth. Whenever an outer planet comes very close to the Earth, then it appears as if it's going retrograde. So remember, it's come very close to Earth, making it stronger, because we're on Earth and therefore we're going to feel its energy much more. So from our perspective, it's closer, right? Like, it seems closer, and therefore we can see that it appears that it's going retrograde. Yeah, like it's like two cars on a highway, and one slows down. You're still going at the same speed, but that one has slowed down. So it appears that it's now going backward, right? Because it's like very much, but it's not. It's just the motion of that planet has changed, and therefore the results are going to be unpredictable. We're only perceiving it as retrograde. Retrograde motion, of course, is regarded as very strong, right? Because the calculation of a retrograde planet is denoted as chestable. In other words, the impact it has on us is strong on the internal level, on the mental level. It's something that, like, it's a planet. Like, if you have retrograde planet in your chart, the significations of that planet, like especially the natural significations of the planet, that's something that's always just in your mind. It's in the back of your mind. It's there. Even if you're not able to get the results that you want, even if those significations aren't manifesting in your life, it's very much internally entrenched. And it could be from a past life, the memories of, whatever that is, right? And you're stuck there for some reason. Chestable is also our stamina. So, like, the ability to make efforts and get forceful results is also there with the natural significations of that planet, whatever they are, as well as the natal significations of that planet, right? Like, whatever that planet rules for you specifically. Most importantly, the retrograde planet gives strength and power to struggle against impossible odds. That's why retrograde planets are regarded as more powerful. And generally, this means that you have to try more than once to get the results, however. Because it is unpredictable energy. So you're tapping into it, but it may not deliver the first time around, or it may deliver a result that just isn't, like, completely doesn't make sense. So you have to do it again, right? Some of these results can be, of course, unpredictable, but also unorthodox. Just, it's not a good fit for you, for what you need. Also strange. It's not what you expect. It may be a good fit, but it's just something that you never would have imagined, for instance. And there will be times when that retrograde planet in your chart can make the impossible become possible, especially if it's a benefic like Jupiter. How this will magically manifest, we will discuss. So, as we said, from the perspective of Sun, there are no retrograde, right? The reason is that this, like, why do they become relevant for us then? Why do they? Because we're on Earth, right? So, like, we have to see it from our perspective, not the Sun's perspective. So from our perspective, it becomes relevant because we're seeing everything from the Bhuloka perspective. Like, not only because we're on Earth, but because for the majority of us, our concerns tend to be on the material planes, on the earthly plane. And therefore, like, you know, most of the time people come to astrologers because they want to know about their material needs, how will they be met. It could be job, marriage, property, children, bank balance, whatever it is, right? So our concerns tend to be on, like, these earthly needs. So first thing to assess is, what type of retrograde station are we dealing with? You see this in your birth chart, of course, but also in transit. There are 8 types of planetary retrograde motions. The first one is the neutral. It's called the Sama mean motion, means mean, basically. Then it's the Vikala stationary, which is considered to be deformed and defunct. The speed here is, if you take speed to be considered as energy, then the stationary motion of retrograde is, of course, considered to be a weak state, because it's just sitting there, right? It's not doing anything. There's no speed at all. But in practice, if you see, stationary makes a planet very, very powerful to give results. But you see, the stationary state can actually be the most troublesome when we're dealing with a malefic graha, right? As you can imagine. Like Saturn is stationary. It can be very problematic. And then we have Shigra, decreasing motion. It's said to be exhausted and it's given up, right? This is the case, but with time, this planet will become more powerful. And then we have Manda, which is the increasing motion, which shows extreme desire, material ambition, and which is going to be like the theme of this conversation today. Retrograde planets do hold extreme desire in them. With this motion, the Manda motion, it becomes more troublesome as the planet can get more erratic with time, like Rahu. Mandatara, which is decreasing motion, shows frustration and giving up. And then there's Shigratara, which is increasing motion, which is highest velocity and material desire. And then there's Vakra, which is decreasing realization and reformed alignment. So the Vakra is actually, we use this term a lot when we talk about retrograde planets, but in fact, technically it's not correct to use it with all retrograde planets, right? Because when a planet first starts its retrograde motion and it starts to, change its speed, that's actually when it's considered to be the most malefic. when it starts to go back to the direct speed, then this is actually Vakra, the decreasing retro motion. And this is what we like to see, because then it doesn't give as erratic of results. Over time, it improves. And then there's AtiVakra, which is the increasing retrograde motion, which is the opposite of the Vakra, right? It's like very rebellious energy. It can show denial, whatever is promised for that graha, because it's very stubborn, this energy. So it's important to understand the term Vakri itself, which is the term that is, like just describing retrograde in Sanskrit. Vakri means crooked. It means twisted. It also means indirect, evasive, ambiguous. It can also mean someone who is dishonest and cunning, someone with a crooked mind. So the planetary movement goes from stationary to retro, and from retro to stationary. So this is, of course, speed that we're talking about, right? Retro, stationary, all of it, this is to do with the speed of the planet. Either it's getting more Vakri, more retrograde, or it's getting less Vakri, less retrograde. And which is what we like, because we can, like, the behavior is becoming more in alignment with that promise, how that planet ought to be behaving in the first place. So if it's becoming less Vakri, it's becoming more in alignment with its nature, with its true nature, right? AtiVakri is the most problematic because it's going, right? Stationary when it's beginning is very problematic, but stationary when it's going back to direct is not so problematic. AtiVakri is the most problematic because this is it wants to rebel against the normal behavior of the planet. Basically, it's a rebellious energy. So it depends on the lordship and placement of that planet to see how it will manifest, how this rebellious energy will manifest in your chart. AtiVakri Graha makes it more challenging. So actually, it's not bad for some lagnas, right? So for example, like you have AtiVakri, Mercury's retrograde in the first house. So speech can become more crude, impolite, unfriendly over time. And it can also make you averse or with money also you can be very reckless. On the other hand, if it's like a Vakri Jupiter, so the planet is getting less retrograde. This Jupiter, for example, is sitting in the 5th house of your chart. Maybe when you were young, you were born into a family that was very uneducated. So you were illiterate. You were uninterested in education in the early years. But over time, you can learn religion, get an education, learn the classics, travel a lot, right? If this is the case, that over time, you actually overcompensate for the fact that Jupiter is retrograde. But because it's Vakri rather than AtiVakri, over time, you develop an interest in all of those Jupiterian qualities, especially sitting in the 5th house. Yes? So this is Jupiter becoming more and more aligned with time and age. So that retro Jupiter, that Vakri Jupiter, not AtiVakri, is giving good results over time. You're tapping into its natural significations. But because it's retrograde, like the energy is so concentrated, so you can end up getting an abundance of the Jupiterian qualities, or the things that are Jupiterian. Money, connection with family, education, children, or connection with your children can increase with time, whatever it is. Games, travel, learning about different cultures, like all of those things. You can like you're like you're overcompensating, or it's just like the abundance is flowing. And this is especially the case if you're getting that Jupiter dasha, right, later on. So let's look at two examples here. So we have we have the example of Obama. He's got two Vakri grahas. Vakri, not AtiVakri. We're only going to talk about that. So in other words, the speed is going less and less retrograde, right? So Vakri grahas, Jupiter and Saturn, sitting in the first house, means difficult circumstances of birth, right? What is Jupiter? It's Jivkark. Saturn is sitting with it. Got two in the first house. So that retrogradation of Jupiter means that the Jiv Atma will go through some suffering. Maybe it could be some health issues early on in life. But if it's less and less retrograde, like it is here, the quality of life will improve over time because it is becoming more and more aligned. Right? Capricorn represents what? Work. So the moment Obama starts to work, he will bring his life into a more aligned circumstance and health as well, right? Because we're talking about the first house. So let's take another example. I think this is like probably a more fascinating example. It's just like it's Bruce Lee's chart. So the Vakri grahas are in the 6th house. And you see in his life, he removed the obstacles and he kept pushing. He experienced the dashas of both of these planets, even in his very short life. So his challenges were aligning over time. But if the planets were AtiVakri, that would have been more difficult. So during his childhood, whilst he experienced Jupiter dasha, he got into many fights. And like rooftop fight, like street fights, rooftop fights. So I think it was in Hong Kong that he grew up. Jupiter's 5th lord, sitting in the 6th house, right? Not the best place for Jupiter, but it is his 5th lord. 1959, as soon as Saturn dasha started, he moved to Seattle and went to university there. He opened his first martial arts school there. Saturn is 4th lord in 6th house, debilitated, but it's Vakri. As well, what's important to understand here in the chart is that Saturn is getting aspected by 4 benefics. It does change things a lot. Saturn is also 3rd lord in 6th house, so it can make someone a good fighter and a sports person, which he was. In this case, he was both, actually. The field of activity here is Aries. So the actions will require energy, creativity, and pushing himself to get results. So the results were the results are going to come in the 6th house, where the enemies and the competition gets defeated. Saturn, of course, will generally perform better than Jupiter in the 6th house, right? Because Saturn does well in the 6th. It's a Justana house, and here any malefic will push you to take chances, take risks, make big achievements. It was also during Saturn Rahu that he was diagnosed with the seizures, epileptic seizures, and he died shortly thereafter. Right? There were some speculations that the medications may have been too strong. Right? You see that Rahu in Virgo, very strong, can bring health issues. So 2 first-rate malefics bringing final demise, and their 6-8 relationship to each other. Right? So now, back to our topic, to speak about the essence of a retrograde planet. What is the essence of a retrograde planet? And I think Bruce Lee's chart demonstrates it really well. Because what we're saying is that planet that is retrograde is going to some extent, behave like Rahu. Right? Like Rahu indicates rebirth based on unfulfilled desire, on unspent karma. So a planet that is retrograde will behave like Rahu because Rahu is naturally retrograde. But Rahu is a shadow planet. With a physical planet that's retrograde, we can see a desire waiting to manifest, that was very strong, and thus has caused rebirth. And to some extent, this is going to trump Rahu's desire nature, even like depending on the planet that's retrograde and the placement. It becomes even more important than Rahu in that way when we look at unfulfilled desires. And in this way, retrograde planets become far more important than the normal direct planets in the chart, right? They stand out. They will stand out in the chart. Especially if you go through the dasha, you will understand what, how you've experienced that. In fact, like, feel free to comment on your experiences with the dasha of a retrograde planet in your chart. Not counting the nodes, of course, right? This desire that the retrograde planet stirs in us can give us a lot of focus. And this is the big advantage to retrograde planets. This is why they bring amazing results. They make you try and try, but finally what you get in the end is much, far supersedes what you would have otherwise gotten with a direct planet in the very beginning, for example. But at the same time, it will give an obsessive fixation on this thing, on its natural karakas, like we discussed about Jupiter. And you will overdo it, you will overcompensate. And see also what houses that planet rules to understand its obsession. Where does that obsession lie? Right? You will keep, the house where it is placed will show that field of activity. Also, where it's playing out. And there will be a lot of activity in that house. You will keep trying and trying and trying to get it right. You don't give up with matters that are connected to this particular planet in your chart. Now, where we have deep penetrating desire, we also have anger, right? Because desire always causes anger. Frustration of desires not manifesting in the way that we want is the main culprit for anger. In the way that we want. It could be manifesting in another way, but the anger is because, the frustration is because, no, I want it this way. Vakri planet will undoubtedly behave impulsively, whether it's Vakri, whether it's it doesn't matter, out of the 8 motions of it, irrespective, a retrograde planet will undoubtedly behave impulsively. If it's AtiVakri, like we discussed, the planet will behave in a completely erratic way. In a very crooked way. So if we take the planets themselves, for instance, Saturn is retrograde, what can we expect? Well, as we saw in Bruce Lee's case, an over-the-top career change, right? That's what that Saturn retrograde in the 6th house brought for him. I mean, yes, it was also aspected by 4 benefics. And Saturn retrograde, we're talking about Saturn, it's going to undoubtedly bring health issues. With him, of course, it's connecting with the house. It's in Aries and it's connecting with the 6th house. Possibly a premature death, as we saw in his case also. It will definitely bring a 180-degree change in your career because Saturn is the Karak Tattva of the 10th house of career. It will certainly bring a deep transformation in your life. So if it is a supportive planet for you, by the time you come out of the dasha, you will not recognize yourself because of that transformation. Big gains can be there for you. Unfulfilled desires being met. Though with Saturn, it may not feel this way because there's enormous struggle to navigate through first, right? 10th house is all action. Here it will punish or it will bless you for your past actions. And this is partly the miracle. And the fortitude that retrograde planet gives you to transform your life. Your entire life path your actions, your career, as it's the Garka of the 10th house. So what if it's Venus retrograde in the chart? Certainly here you will see ups and downs in your finances, right? There can be an on and off energy in relationships. For some people, relationships just don't stick. But attractions will be obsessive and difficult to let go of. The desire to be with someone special is so strong here that it can have you romanticizing the wrong people also, like idealizing the wrong people. It's actually akin to like a Rahu-Venus combination in the chart. Here the challenge is that you may tend to choose unsuitable, unavailable people. It can also be that you have a hard time expressing your feelings. Venus retrograde can make giving and receiving love and affection difficult for you. There could be a feeling of like low self-esteem or self-worth, right? You will experience at least once in your lifetime a very soulful connection that feels like you have known the person for many lifetimes. The struggle here is with self-love, self-acceptance, and this needs to be healed. Desire nature is very strong, of course, right, with the Venus retrograde in your chart, and can bring you in touch with many possibilities in your love life. Your resources, money, and time can undergo major shifts in your lifetime. And there may be a miracle of sorts here with a windfall, like big money coming suddenly, for instance. It can be the opposite also, with losing a lot of money very suddenly, and perhaps due to a relationship, divorce, separation, what have you. If you really want to heal this placement, this Venus retrograde placement, especially your love life, then consider going into silence once in a while. Like it could be a day a month. As simple as that. Like it doesn't have to be for a long time. Do silence retreats or meditation retreats with others, with other people. So how about Mars retrograde? There is struggle here with expression of like anger. It could be lust. It could be frustration that comes from that. Your ambition and drive can also feel very thwarted and repressed. Your deep desire here with the Mars retrograde is to be seen as someone to be reckoned with. Here you want to be seen as bold, like a strategic planner, a courageous warrior. So this Mars retrograde will make you quick to anger. It will make you impulsive. And it can also leave you as a volcano that's like ready to burst at any time. There can be a struggle with property matters and with the mother side of the family. It could be also a loss of mother at an early age. Loss or separation. Relationship with brothers can also get spoiled with this placement. A well-placed Mars, however, will bring property luck after some struggle. So what about Jupiter retrograde? This can be a big blessing or a big curse, because so many of your areas of life, of our life, depend on Jupiter's strength and ability to give results, right? After all, Jupiter is the Garaka for the 2nd, 5th, 9th, 10th, and 11th houses. Right? So we're talking about money, children, family, luck factor, Bhagyastan, right? It's a luck factor, which is very important. So you can feel unlucky whilst you're growing up with the Jupiter retrograde. Things just don't seem to work out in these areas of life. You can feel disconnected or somehow different from your family members. You'll also have low self-confidence growing up. Later in life, you will be much better received by others for your out-of-the-box worldviews, opinions, outlooks in life. There's a deep desire for understanding the foundations of life, of questioning them. Religion, philosophy, all of that. The value of family, money, and career is called into question and scrutinized with the Jupiter retrograde. Right? The conventional structures of society. Family, money, and career. And you can also lack fulfillment in these areas. Rather, with Jupiter retrograde, there's a longing for connecting to the spirit. Higher learning, deeper philosophy. See life in a broader perspective, rather than that day-to-day mundane affairs, right? There's also a strong desire to travel, to study, to see the big picture, learn about religions, cultures, philosophies that are different from yours. And there can be a tendency to be escapist. Jupiter retrograde will, however, give you like a natural penchant for things that are 12th house also, like meditation, spirituality, yoga. Over time, you will be drawn to the living material significations of Jupiter: wealth, family, children. Invariably, of course, with all of the retrograde planets, not just Jupiter, there's a delay with the life significations manifesting, right? So what about Mercury retrograde? Significations include speaking, writing, knowledge, health, money, business, entrepreneurial activities. There's a deep desire to achieve and succeed in these facets of life. There are blocks here, though, with expression and being honest and being forthright. You can often be misunderstood and misread because your communication style is evasive and you tend to speak in a roundabout fashion. Cultivate directness, and it's very good to journal your thoughts and desires, as this will help you communicate with others. Building more skills, acquiring knowledge, reading will be a lifelong development for you. Social media, though, can be very addictive for you, so you may end up wasting a lot of time here. Mercury retrograde, you want to be seen as a worldly person. That's your deep desire. Like, you want to be seen as someone who's up to date with all the current affairs, the international news, the new trends, the advancements in society. You want to be regarded as someone who has all the answers because you know so much about everything, right? Like about various subjects. There's a deep desire to be seen as intelligent, well-spoken. Mercury is, of course, the Karaka for the 2nd and 10th houses, the money houses, right? The Artha houses. So your image is important to you. Like, you want to be respected. But dealing with misunderstandings, miscommunications is something that you will often experience, especially when that Mercury goes retrograde in transit as well. So that's all for now, folks. Please feel free to add your thoughts and ideas in the comments below. Cheers.